Greetings and salutations, everyone. My name is Andrew Kirchhoff, and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today, we're talking about my Week 7 wide receiver starter sits for the 2019 fantasy football season. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about news around the National Football League, then also talking about the matchups going into Week 7 at the wide receiver position, then going over my top 36 wide receiver rankings on the week. Before we get into that, let me remind all of you, if you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button, join the community. We're almost at the 11,000 subscriber mark, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Also, click that bell notification button to stay up to date on my latest content. Make sure to click the like button on today's video, and also don't forget there are always timestamps in every single one of my videos down below. And don't forget, Sunday mornings, 8:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, live streams will be happening for this channel. All right. Hey everybody, how's it going? So, a couple pieces of news right before we get into anything. We have Cooper Kupp as our number one wide receiver this week. As you can tell, Andrew's wearing a Rams jersey. And yesterday, there was the highs and lows of being a Rams fan. So I sat there and I saw Marcus Peters get traded. I saw Aqib Talib go to the IR, and I thought to myself, well, season's over. Then all of a sudden, I hear that the Rams pretty much... they went and they grabbed the best cornerback in the National Football League. We have acquired Jalen Ramsey. That is fantastic. I'm not sure whether or not he's going to play this week, but I expect him to do so because that back injury he's been dealing with is pretty fake. But either way, in terms of other news around the National Football League, in terms of pertaining to fantasy football, Marcus Mariota has been benched for the services of Ryan Tannehill. There's a reason why they went and got Ryan Tannehill, because they knew that this would potentially be a possibility, and they're very similar. They're both they're both capable mobile quarterbacks. They both can't throw the ball and will struggle. So we'll see how Ryan Tannehill does. Hopefully he can at least create some value for other receiving guys, like potentially Adam Humphries. Adam Humphries, the slot corner for that team, they went and they paid him a lot of money this offseason. Potentially because of how much Ryan Tannehill targeted the slot receiver position while he was in Miami. I mean, you guys can remember, Jarvis Landry had over 1,000 yards in a couple of those seasons, over 100 catches. Maybe we can see a boost from Adam Humphries. Definitely not this week. He has to play against Desmond King, cornerback of the Chargers, best slot corner in the game as of right now, according to Pro Football Focus. So that's definitely something we don't want to touch. But yeah, obviously there are other pieces of news going around. There are players that are either practicing or not practicing today. Again, Wednesdays, we have to remember, Wednesdays are typically days that players will miss in order to just make sure that they can take care of their bodies. They'll be in the training room for a majority of the day. And stuff like that. So just don't completely panic if somebody does not practice today. But typically Thursdays and Fridays are the days that we want to go ahead and make sure they are practicing in order to kind of confirm that they're going to play. But either way, that's basically in terms of news. If anything else is to occur, obviously we will be updated that tomorrow before the Thursday night game, before the Chiefs and the Broncos. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let's talk about the wide receiver position at Week 7? For Week 7, let's talk about the matchups going into this week. As we all know, the Philadelphia Eagles cannot stop anybody in the passing game. We saw, Stefon Diggs, Adam Thielen torched that team. It's no surprise. But the thing is, the Dallas Cowboys potentially could be without Amari Cooper this week. Obviously left the game with that quad injury. Most likely, for sure, he did not practice today. And there's most likely a chance in which he does not play this week with the injuries to Amari Cooper, to Tyron Smith, Lyle Collins, Randall Cobb. This Dallas Cowboys offense is really in need of some help, and they could struggle this week potentially. Moving on to Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are on a bye week. The Falcons get to play against the Rams, who are in dire need of a victory after taking 3 L's in a row. Trust me, I'm aware. And then we get the Giants, who are subject to Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray had a pretty good game last week against the Falcons. He should have another good one against the Giants. But anyway, we're not talking about quarterbacks. We're talking about wide receivers. Hopefully, Christian Kirk can be healthy this week for him to contribute. The Washington Redskins get to play against the 49ers. 49ers don't really have any receivers that are consistent enough, but we'll see if we can find at least one this week. Hopefully, that'll be the case. The Texans play against the Indianapolis Colts. That should be a shootout. Oakland Raiders. If Davante Adams plays, that'd be great. But otherwise, there really isn't too much of a passing offense there in Green Bay until Davante Adams can really come back and right the ship in the correct direction. Other than that, we have the Dolphins certainly giving up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers. We have the Carolina Panthers on a bye week. The New Orleans Saints. Again, New Orleans Saints were in like the top 3 a couple weeks ago, if you guys don't remember, of giving up a lot of points to opposing wide receivers on average in half PPR scoring formats. And again, like I've been mentioning, they're beginning to tighten up that defense. Typically what they do is by week 10, they tighten it up. This is a little bit, I guess the sense of urgency in order for this defense to keep them in games is at an all-time high, especially considering they don't have Drew Brees at the moment. But still, they're continuing to tighten up. That defense is continuing to look good. They have another good matchup this week. I don't know how much Mitchell Trubisky is going to be able to do against them. Talking about the tougher matchups, the Kansas City Chiefs typically don't give up much points to opposing wide receivers because, let's be honest, they can't stop the run, and that's what typically teams want to do, and that's what the Broncos are going to do to them this week. Still, Courtland Sutton has some value there. The Tennessee Titans, Dallas Cowboys, the 49ers, the Bears, Chargers, Bengals, Bills, Patriots, and then we have here the Denver Broncos. A lot of interesting matchups coming down the pike this week. I think there are some guys that are going to be in these tougher matchups that have a good opportunity in order to make some plays. But all in all, like the 49ers, the only person for the Redskins to play is Terry McLaurin. And that's going to be tough for him because he's going to, garner all of the attention from that defense. Talking about the Cowboys. That Cowboys defense is okay. But, outside of Alshon Jeffery, there really isn't anybody else. These are just like defenses playing against one wide receiver. Wide receiver twos are not really that plentiful as of right now. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But either way, at this moment in time, just to give you guys some perspective, obviously, many of you saw this yesterday for the wide receiver strength of schedule rest of season video. If you haven't checked that out already, I would 100% suggest you do so. But anyway, let's go ahead and let's talk about my top 36 wide receiver rankings on week 7. Starting off with number 1, Cooper Kupp. It's a foregone conclusion. It should be an easy play. Cooper Kupp's been great all season long. Unfortunately, this past week he saw a little bit of a hiccup, but hey, he's going to get back on track this week against one of the worst defenses in the National Football League, the Atlanta Falcons. Overall, I think if in fact whether or not Todd Gurley is playing or not does not impact Cooper Kupp's availability and or his production at this moment in time, this Atlanta Falcons defense is very bad. And at this moment in time, all 3 of the Rams wide receivers should be plays this week, but Cooper Kupp, because of the amount of targets, amount of usage he gets, and his touchdown upside, he's my number 1 certainly. All right, moving on to number 2, DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins. I'm just gonna hope. We're gonna hope that you can, you get right back on track. Typically, the last time you played against the Indianapolis Colts wasn't easy. It was in the playoffs. But this time you have Will Fuller on the other side of the field, perhaps pulling away some attention from the coverage of the Colts. The Colts have been okay defensively this year, not as good as they've been in years prior, especially last year. Last year they were really an elite defense late in the season, and it visually was pretty apparent. But as of right now, DeAndre Hopkins saw a decent amount of targets, got a lot of work, but unfortunately for some reason, DeAndre Hopkins is catching passes 5 yards from the line of scrimmage instead of 15 yards from the line of scrimmage. Very interesting. They have him almost at like a slot receiver. He's running very shallow routes. Unfortunately, that is not exactly what you want to see. He was able to get himself a 2-point conversion here or there. There was a holding on a goal line attempt to pass the ball to him. Deshaun Watson rolled out last week against the Chiefs. DeAndre Hopkins would have been open on a slant route in the back, but there was a holding call, and Deshaun Watson just ran it in. So all in all, again, there are going to be opportunities for DeAndre Hopkins. They are coming. He's my number 2 this week. Moving on to number 3. The only reason I don't have Julio at number 2 is the concern of Jalen Ramsey. We all know that he is one of the better cornerbacks in the National Football League in terms of size, speed, and ability. The guy is unmatched in comparison to a lot of these other corners. As of right now, obviously, the biggest question is how easy is it for him to come into this team, instantly pick up the defense? I know he's got a great mind for the game, but how quickly will he be able to adapt and pick up and start going for this defense? It's going to be a tough matchup because I do believe it's going to be a shootout, but if he can lock down Julio, there's always a possibility that Julio doesn't have a great game. But either way, he is Julio Jones. You are starting him no matter what. Therefore, he will sit at my number 3 as of right now in hopes that he can make a big play here. All right, let's talk about number 4, Michael Thomas, playing against the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears defensively not amazing this year. We've seen performances especially by rookies, in fact. I mean, obviously, we remember Josh Jacobs completely destroying them in London, but a couple weeks prior to that, on a Monday night game, we remember Terry McLaurin having a monster game against the secondary of the Bears. So there's always a good chance that Teddy Bridgewater can string something together for Michael Thomas. Either way, Thomas is getting a good amount of targets on a weekly basis. As long as he can continue to see such, and then he can get some opportunities in the red zone, we could have a good game here. Michael Thomas, one of those go-to for sure starts every single week. Therefore, he'll sit him at number 4 this week. Moving on to number 5, Tyreek Hill. I've always mentioned to you guys the volatility of Tyreek Hill. The guy could put up 8 points. He could put up 28 points. This last week, a nice 22, 2 touchdowns, one on a broken play in which a defender was offside, free play. Patrick Mahomes chucked it up. The guy jumped 48 inches into the air. That vertical was nasty. And he came down with the ball. So we know Tyreek Hill's ability. The Denver Broncos typically want to run a man defense. Now, the issue with that is probably going to be that you can't really run a man defense on a guy like Tyreek Hill. His speed is very deadly, so he's going to have opportunities here and there. They're going to absolutely double cover him because Sammy Watkins, I'm not sure if he's going to play, but only time will tell if Sammy is healthy and ready to go. It's a short week again. But as of right now, Tyreek Hill, he always has the upside of having a monster week and being that number 1 wide receiver. He was the number 3 in half PPR last week. And then he always has the ups, the downside of his volatility. But as of right now, we're just going to hope that because, in fact, this offense is struggling so much, he's going to see some work, and he's going to make a big play this week. He's my number 5. All right, moving on to number 6, Adam Thielen. All right, so yes, Stefon Diggs had a monster week last week. He had his 3 touchdowns. He had his breakout game. Welcome to 2019, Stefon Diggs. But Adam Thielen is still the number 1 wide receiver there, in my opinion, and he's going to continue to be so. Adam Thielen still caught a touchdown there. He snapped that corner's ankles in the back of the end zone, gave him that little hitch and go kind of move. Found, tiptoes in the back of the end zone, scored himself a touchdown. He is still a viable wide receiver. And now that this offense is really starting to get into a rhythm on the ground, through the air, Kirk Cousins has confidence under his belt for the last couple of weeks. This is only trending in the right direction. And I think a guy like Adam Thielen continues to be a trusty wide receiver play. For those of you who drafted him, you went through the rough times. Now we're going to start to see a lot of production in his direction, hopefully. Obviously, those 100-yard receiving games are probably not a possibility, but if he continues to find the end zone, he continues to have value. He's my number 6. Moving on to number 7, T.Y. Hilton. All right, so here's the thing about T.Y. Hilton. Again, Houston Texans, not great against opposing defenses opposing wide receivers, in terms of especially speedsters. Tyreek Hill really put a number on them. T.Y. Hilton, pretty much the same. He's a speedy wide receiver. He is the number 1 wide receiver of this offense. Jacoby Brissett should have a good game here against the Houston Texans at home. Typically, these games are back and forth shootouts. The last time that these two teams played, obviously, was with Andrew Luck in the playoffs. A lower scoring affair for the Texans offense. But typically, these games have been back and forth shootouts, and I think that's what we're going to trend to see this week. And that's why I have T.Y. Hilton as high as I do. He's my number 7. I got a lot of confidence in him coming off of this bye week. He should be fully healthy for the rest of the season, ready to go. Moving on to number 8, Tyler Lockett. All right, so the Rams did trade Marcus Peters. They traded him to the Ravens. So the Ravens get, Marcus Peters is the number 1 their number 1 cornerback going forward, but that's not going to affect Tyler Lockett. He will probably be on DK Metcalf. And if you guys don't remember, DK Metcalf a couple weeks back against the Rams did score on a post that Marcus Peters completely failed to cover. So there's always a chance that DK Metcalf this week has a good week. We'll talk about him in a little bit. But either way, Tyler Lockett. Here's the thing. My thought process as of right now, Tyler Lockett in terms of targets kind of diminished in the last couple weeks, probably because, in my opinion, the emergence of running the ball so heavily with Chris Carson. I mean, they really have started to run the ball 20-plus times, 25 times a game on average to Chris Carson. And then the emergence of Will Dissly. Now, the sustainability of being able to run the ball 25 times a game eventually will catch up with Chris Carson. And Will Dissly is gone because of the Achilles injury. I do believe going forward, Tyler Lockett is going to see a boost in opportunity from Russell Wilson because, sure, you can throw the ball to David Moore. You can throw the ball to Jerome Brown. You can throw the ball to DK Metcalf. But we all know who the number 1 wide receiver this team is, and that's Tyler Lockett. And I think in a game like this, at home, should be able to put something together. He's my number 8. Moving on to number 9, Julian Edelman. The only wide receiver on the Patriots that I trust and I really want to play. Perhaps there's a possibility that I want to play Dorsett, but that's in a deeper league, and I'm desperate for a play, right? Don't want to touch Josh Gordon. Don't want to touch Jacoby Myers. I'm okay only playing Julian Edelman in terms of this offense receiving-wise as a wide receiver. And then outside of Julian Edelman, it's Sony Michel and James White. That's pretty much it. And that shouldn't be a surprise. He plays against the Jets this week. Should have a good matchup. I think Julian Edelman, as consistent as he gets at the wide receiver position, and truly is the number one wide receiver of this team and is producing as so. He was last year, continues to be on pace for another great year here. He's my number 9 on the week. Moving on to number 10, John Brown. I probably have John Brown higher than just about anybody that I mean, I don't know what other people are ranking him, but let's be honest, I don't know if anybody's crazy enough to put John Brown at 10. Here's the thought process, all right? If, in fact, Xavier Howard is out again, which he was this last week against the Redskins, if he is out again, there is a potential, even whether he's out or not, I do believe John Brown is a good enough wide receiver to make plays. And also, they play against the Dolphins, and the Dolphins' defense is not great. Sure, they're going to be playing, is it in Miami? No, it's not in Miami. It's in Buffalo. It's even better for them. They don't have to travel. They're coming off of a bye week. This offense is going to be firing on all cylinders. I really do believe this matchup just promotes, a lot of high scoring from Josh Allen. If you guys go back, if you are a Josh Allen owner, if you have picked him up like I have suggested for the 1,000th time, go and look at what Josh Allen was capable of doing against the Miami Dolphins last season. I think in each matchup, he scored 4 touchdowns against the Miami Dolphins. And they are far worse right now than they were last year. Imagine that. I'm telling you, John Brown, going to be the number 1 of this team going forward. No Zay Jones. Cole Beasley will run around doing some stuff. But as of right now, John Brown will be the McLaurin of this week. We'll have a big game. Touchdown, probably. Big yardage, hopefully. Moving on. Let's talk about my number 11, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen has disappeared in the last 3 weeks. If you're a Keenan Allen owner, you are crying. And I'm sorry, because he started off the first 3 weeks as the best wide receiver in the National Football League. I mean, the amount of targets, 10 plus every single week. He almost had, I think he had like a 16 target game once against the Texans. I mean, we were looking at Keenan Allen like, holy moly. Where did this guy come from, right? This isn't Keenan Allen. And then he's regressed back into being Keenan Allen, where he's extremely inconsistent in this offense, does not see more than 10 targets a game, and is completely invisible to Phillip Rivers at times. That in itself, that phrase of words is unfortunate. What can we do about it? Nothing much. He plays against the Titans this week. They're going to play some man coverage. He's pretty good in terms of finding separation. He's not a speedster. He's got great route running. He's going to find himself open. It's just a matter of whether or not this offensive line can hold up and allow Phillip Rivers to deliver the ball there. As of right now, with Hunter Henry coming back, Mike Williams looking good, it hurts the value of Keenan Allen. That's why he's dropped this low. Still, he's a play every single week, no matter the matchup, and therefore he is my number 11. Moving on to number 12. Now, number 12 is Michael Gallup for a reason. Amari Cooper, I'm assuming, is not going to play. Now, Amari Cooper is right under me right here. Now, if Amari Cooper is going to play, he's my number 1. Against that Eagles secondary, absolutely. Absolutely, Amari Cooper would be my number 1. But considering I'm assuming he's not going to play, I have Michael Gallup as my number 12 wide receiver this week. As a wide receiver 1, a guy that you can start and not worry about, because I truly believe, despite the matchup, despite the struggles that this offense will face, he is going to be able to catch the ball a bunch, and he's going to have many opportunities to do so and be able to have himself a pretty good week here. Michael Gallup owners, for those of you who do have him, again, this is a guy you should be starting, especially this week. Okay, before we move on, again, I did talk about Amari Cooper just right now, and I need to talk about right here Mr. Davante Adams. Dealing with turf toe, I would say the likelihood of him actually playing this week is about 35 to 40%. That is not great, and you should probably not anticipate him doing so. So for those of you who are Davante Adams owners, you just got to hold on tight and just hope that he comes back soon. But either way, at this moment in time, do not anticipate him playing. But if he does, again, rankings are always subject to change, and we will see how that turns out on Sunday. All right, let's go ahead and talk about my wide receiver 2s on the week. Number 13. Oh, my goodness. Okay, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I'd like you guys to all do me a favor and go and watch Will Fuller drop 3 touchdowns against the Kansas City Chiefs last week. There is a video out there, finding. I think this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go and like the video on Twitter. Go to my profile at Kirchhoff, and you will watch it. I'm not kidding. It is one of the most ridiculous things you will ever see. Just watching the game last week, I'm sitting there thinking this guy could have had another 40-point game, and I really do think that the way that DeAndre Hopkins has been utilized within this offense and the amount of deep passes that Will Fuller has seen in terms of air yardage, holy moly. Will Fuller is going to have another one of these big games, and going forward, as long as this guy stays healthy, he's going to be a good wide receiver for this team. Number 13 on the week, not a bad play. In fact, I want to play him in every league, and that's why I'm going to. He's my number 13. Moving on to 14, Stefon Diggs. Again, Stefon Diggs had a breakout week. Typically, when guys have breakout weeks like that, they come back and then they drop goose eggs, right? Will Fuller, DJ Chark. There's a bunch of guys that'll have a monster week and come back around and just kind of disappear. Hopefully, that's not going to be the case here. I expect Darius Slay to be on the opposition of Adam Thielen this week. Therefore, there's going to be a lot of Stefon Diggs running around freely against this Lions secondary, in my opinion. This Lions secondary is pretty good, but they still, for some reason, they couldn't guard a couple of these other players for the Packers when it really mattered. But actually, there was a couple PI calls and stuff like that. Okay, we're not going to talk about that, all right? Either way, as of right now, Stefon Diggs, obviously, if you're a Stefon Diggs owner, you want to play him. And I don't blame you for it, but again, just be careful. I have him at number 14 this week because I am playing him, and I do think it is a better matchup for him. And Kirk Cousins' ability to actually do something is kind of gives some confidence for me, at least trending in the right direction for these wide receivers. So as of right now, Stefon Diggs at number 14, not mad at it at all. All right, moving on to 15, Calvin Ridley. So when Julio is getting locked down on the other side of the field, there's going to be a bunch of options. There's going to be Austin Hooper. There's going to be, Calvin Ridley, Mohamed Sanu, and Devontae Freeman. Calvin Ridley certainly is the option that I want to probably have in my lineup this week, especially considering they're playing against the Rams. There is no more Aqib Talib, and Ramsey's going to be on Julio. Therefore, Calvin Ridley should be running free as the number 2 wide receiver of this team. I have a lot of confidence in the idea that Calvin Ridley has the upside of maybe having one of his best games of the season this week. Moving on to number 16, DJ Chark. DJ Chark wasn't great this past week, but again, they get to play against the Bengals. Really favorable matchup. And in fact, Drake Kirkpatrick, one of the, I think he's a corner for the Bengals. He's done. It only just promotes the idea that, this offense is probably just going to run all over the Bengals. And just do anything that they want. DJ Chark is the number 1 wide receiver in terms of targets. Last week, Marshawn Lattimore locked him down a bit. But again, he still continues to see targets. And I think this week is going to be able to right the ship in the correct direction. All right. Moving on to number 17 in 1 second. All right. Moving on to number 17. Kenny Golladay. All righty. So Kenny Golladay, last couple weeks, 9 targets, 5 receptions. Pretty suit. Over 100 yards this past week. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get into the end zone. But then again, Kenny Golladay continuing to be a serviceable wide receiver too on a weekly basis. A guy that is being able to produce in a pretty good amount. Unfortunately, pretty tough matchup for him this week against the top cornerback of the Vikings. But still, I have a lot of confidence in Kenny Golladay. They're going to move him around the formation, and he's going to find some success. Maybe Marvin Jones ends up, catching a ball here or there for a touchdown, but still, I do want to continue to play Kenny Golladay, and that's why I have him at number 17. Moving on to number 18, Robert Woods. All right, you're playing against the Falcons. The Falcons can't stop anybody. I'm starting up my Rams. Robert Woods, I don't expect you to be incredible, but I don't expect you to be terrible either. So I leave you at the middle of the pack as a wide receiver too. That's where you should be able to produce. There's no way you do any less than this. Therefore, you are at my number 18 on the week. Moving on to number 19, Larry Fitzgerald, playing against one of the worst defenses in the league, the New York Giants. Larry Fitzgerald, if in fact Christian Kirk is playing, only helps his value. And I think Larry Fitz, yes, his last couple weeks have not been great in terms of targets, receptions. I mean, he had an okay week. I think what he had, 69 receiving yards and 6 receptions on 8 targets. Not bad in a PPR, but that's not the amount of numbers that we want to see, especially against a matchup against the Falcons last week. It was such a juicy matchup. We would have thought to ourselves, well, here comes a 15, 20-point performance from Larry Fitzgerald. Fortunately, we weren't not able to see that. But going forward, hopefully in this matchup, we could find something at a better sense. Larry Fitz just needs more targets. All right, moving on to number 20. It's Courtland Sutton playing on Thursday night. He is the number 1 wide receiver of this team. I did hear that Emmanuel Sanders will be playing. Truly, I don't really care if Emmanuel Sanders is playing. Courtland Sutton is just the number 1 far and away, continues to see a great amount of targets, a lot of work. This is going to be a game in which they want to heavily run the ball, and in the play action, Courtland Sutton is going to find himself open and be a great contributor to your team. He's my number 20 this week. Moving on to 21, Alshon Jeffery continues to always put up like 10-plus points a week, which is absolutely fantastic for fantasy owners. Obviously, this is a little bit of a tricky matchup, but I think this is going in the direction of the Eagles this week. The Cowboys, they're going to be struggling, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for a guy like Alshon Jeffery to potentially have himself a good touchdown here. Last week with a touchdown. Otherwise, the guy outside of him, Zach Ertz, Miles Sanders, there really isn't another wide receiver there that is catching as many balls, and that's not what we expect to see outside of Alshon Jeffery. He's my number 21. All right, moving on to number 22, Brandin Cooks. Speaking of Robert Woods just a couple minutes ago, again, you get to play against the Falcons. It's an inside stadium. You're going to be able to take the top off the defense and probably have a good game. All of these Rams wide receivers are going to have a good week. Yes, the offensive line for the Rams, probably one of the worst in the league. The quarterback for the Rams, probably one of the worst in the league. But, he's still going to be able to do something and at least bring some value, at least this week, to these receivers, and probably next week. They got pretty good matchups here. Falcons and Bengals. Those are two easy matches for the next 2 weeks. These guys should be good to go for the next two. Moving on to 23, Allen Robinson. Now, my only concern with Allen Robinson is Marshawn Lattimore. If Marshawn Lattimore wants to lock him down and he ends up doing so because Mitch Trubisky cannot throw a ball, then we're going to have problems. But again, Allen Robinson, last time we saw him in London, 2 touchdowns, big game. Outside of that, he really is the number one wide receiver of this team. He continues to see a good amount of targets and find a lot of production. He is the only guy in the receiving game that is a guarantee in terms of scoring, at least. As of right now, there really isn't anybody else. Sure, we saw that 1 week with Taylor Gabriel, but outside of that's just an anomaly at this point. There is no Anthony Miller, and I think as of right now, Allen Robinson should be able to find himself some value. He's my number 23. Tyler Boyd at 24, playing against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sure, the Jaguars got some first-round picks, but they won't have Ramsey back there. It is going to at least help this offense for the Bengals a tad bit, take a little bit of pressure off of them. There's always a potential this week that AJ Green also plays. If that is the case, Tyler Boyd's value just continues to rise, and that's why I have him at number 24 this week. All right, moving on to the last wide receivers of today, the number 25 through 36, my wide receiver threes on the week. Starting off with number 25, Christian Kirk. He's been out the last couple weeks. Hopefully, he's trending in the right direction to play this week. Even if he doesn't practice today, the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, are going to be the most important in order to kind of anticipate whether or not he will play. If he doesn't, so be it, but I anticipate him to do so. And in this matchup against the New York Giants, it's as juicy as it gets. He's my number 25. Speaking of the New York Giants versus Cardinals matchup, number 26, Auden Tate. Sterling Shepard's probably going to miss this week. Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley are both practicing in full. Therefore, this is a brand new, revitalized offense for the Giants. Still, Auden Tate is going to be the number one wide receiver of that team, quote unquote. He'll probably see less receptions than Saquon and Evan Ingram, but he's still going to have value, especially in a matchup where it's going to be a shootout because defenses cannot stop anybody. Moving on to 27, Marquise Brown, another injured wide receiver that we're not completely 100% confident in this week, in the terms that we don't know if he's going to play. If he ends up playing, I want to play him against this the Seattle Seahawks matchup. But if he is going to miss time, I'm not going to be surprised either. This is a guy that we want to just at least have on the list so that we're all aware that as a wide receiver 3 play with upside, because of his capabilities, with his speed and this offense, he's not a bad play. But again, we have to be careful, make sure that he's healthy. Moving on to 28. Speaking of another, there's a lot of injured wide receivers, but I'm telling you, if these guys can play this week, they're in pretty decent matchups. Tyrell Williams, no matter what team he's played against, has been a great double-digit scoring contributor for fantasy owners. In this Raiders offense, he has become surely the number one wide receiver and receiving option, and really taken hold of that number one spot. He's looking like he has in years past. In his sophomore year, when Keenan Allen went down with that season-ending injury, he stepped up and he was the number one wide receiver for the Chargers, and that's exactly what he's done this year. He's pretty much taken all the experience from the last couple of years with the Chargers and just become that number one for the Raiders, which he's looking good at. As of right now against the Packers, tough matchup, but I'm still confident in Tyrell. Moving on to number 29, Mohamed Sanu. Again, if I'm going to start all the Rams wide receivers, I'm certainly starting all of the Falcons wide receivers. The only reason Mohamed Sanu is this low in comparison is because the Falcons do use Austin Hooper far more, and he'll probably see the more targets than maybe even Calvin Ridley and Mohamed Sanu. But either way, Mohamed Sanu as the number 4 receiving option there, not a bad option. He's always got the capability or possibility of scoring a touchdown, have himself a big game. So he's at 29. Moving on to 30, Jamison Crowder. So this is going to be a tough game for the Jets. That's not an understatement or a surprise by anybody in any stretch of the imagination. As of right now, Robbie Anderson, who is going to be on the outside, and Demaryius Thomas on the other side, they're going to be in a little bit of a trouble, right? You're going to have Stephon Gilmore and the twin McCourty brothers locking everybody down. So where does that leave, Sam Darnold to throw the ball? It's Jamison Crowder, Chris Herndon, maybe Le'Veon Bell. That's why I have Crowder this high. That's why I do not have Robbie Anderson on today or this week's top 36, because I really do believe he's going to be double covered the whole game. They're going to take that away from him. And I think Jamison Crowder, with the presence of Sam Darnold, again, this past week, 98 receiving yards, had a bunch of work in the passing game in a PPR format. Jamison Crowder has a lot of value, guys. I'm telling you, pick him up. Either way, moving on to number 31, Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, again, in tough matchups, has still found himself to be of service. As long as Case Keenum is the quarterback, he should be a pretty decent wide receiver. I don't have him as a wide receiver 2 this week just because I'm a little bit sketched out. He's going to have Sherman all over him, and I think this defense for the 49ers aren't going to allow much. Maybe in garbage time he can put something together. That's why he's a wide receiver 3 on my number 31. Moving on to number 32, Mike Williams. Had the best week of his season last week. Dropped a couple, vital passes that would have made his week, but still is continuing to trend in the right direction in terms of targets and production and at least usage in this offense. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not running the ball enough and or effectively. If that continues to stay on pace, which I expect it to do, especially against the Titans this week, and the Chargers are down in the game, Mike Williams is going to be utilized. Therefore, he sits at 32. Moving on to 33, DK Metcalf, the Terminator himself. I mean, DK Metcalf, as of right now, you could say it's either him or Jerron Brown as the number 2, but Jerron Brown caught 2 touchdowns this past week. I think that's just, a matter of it happens. Dumb luck. Jerron Brown's not going to be doing that on a weekly basis, even though he has been a good contributor for this Seahawks offense in seasons prior. I think Jerron Brown, David Moore, I think both scored 5 touchdowns last year total. There's more to come from those 2, but DK Metcalf is the number 2 wide receiver in terms of targets, and should be good this week going forward. I don't mind the matchup at all against the Ravens, and I think he should be fine. He's my number 33. Moving on to 34, Auden Tate. Now, this is the assumption that if AJ Green is not to play, Auden Tate would have value. Now, excuse me. All right, so now this is my thought process. If in fact AJ Green's out, and we don't have to worry about him, Auden Tate's a good play. But if AJ Green's in, I don't really want to play Auden Tate. I move him down the list. He pretty much disappears off the list, and we throw AJ Green as the top 12 wide receiver. Anyway, just so everyone's on the same page, that's the case. All right, moving on to 235, Marques Valdez-Scantling. This is for if, in fact, you know what? Whether or not Davante Adams plays, I think Marques Valdez-Scantling sits here. He's a guy that is the number 1 for this team if Davante Adams is out. And if Davante Adams is in, seems to get more work in the passing game because there is less attention focused on him. So either way, I think he sits at 35. Hasn't had a good couple weeks. Very limited in terms of targets. They want to run the ball heavily in Green Bay, and I don't blame them. That's pretty much their best chance of at least moving the ball. So as of right now, he sits as a fringe, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 3 here at the bottom. All right, moving on to the last wide receiver I wanted to mention on today's video, Dante Pettis of the San Francisco 49ers. Again, guys, the Washington Redskins have given up 10 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers in the first 6 weeks of the 2019 fantasy football season, and I do believe Dante Pettis is trending in the right direction. Last week, he saw more snaps than any other wide receiver on the San Francisco 49ers. Unfortunately, dropped a slant that would have been a touchdown. This guy is going to continue to finally get his job back over time. It's going to take a while, but I think this is a week in which he can go ahead and staple that in and put the nail in the coffin and hopefully just get it back. the corners for, or just the secondary for the Redskins, not great. The defense, not great. They're going to run the ball. They're going to feed Kittle. Hopefully Dante Pettis can show up and have himself a good game. That's why I have him at 36. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you haven't yet already, click that subscribe button. Click the like button on today's video. And thank you for watching. I appreciate it so much. Tomorrow, we will be talking about the quarterback and tight end starts of the week prior to the Thursday night game. And then a little bit later today, I will be releasing my quarterback rest of season schedule, similar to the wide receivers and to the running backs. So hopefully you guys go ahead and check that out. That video will probably be right there eventually when it comes out. But anyway, thank you again, everybody, for watching. And until next time, I will see you guys. Peace.